Okay, here's the next part. The roots or the origins of sociology. We talked about utopia. That was our last slide. Now we're going to move into our sort of an honorable mention in terms of a founding father in sociology. Herbert Spencer. Herbert Spencer is often credited as being the second founding father of sociology. He was a British philosopher as well. He expanded the ideas of Charles Darwin. If you've probably heard of Darwin, Origin of the Species, Voyage of the Beagle, Survival of the Fittest, all that good stuff. Well, his ideas were applied to not to humans. Now, Spencer came along, and others like him came along and applied Darwin's ideas of survival of the fittest to the human population, to the human race. So the idea of social Darwinism comes into play. This is a theory that individuals, groups, and peoples are subject to the same biological Darwinian laws of natural selection as plants and animals. So you get this idea that starts coming along in the late 19th and 20th centuries. This idea of social Darwinism was used to justify imperialism, racism, oppression of all kinds of different peoples and groups of people. The idea of social Darwinism, basically, the weak are left to fend for themselves. If you help the poor, if you help the needy, if you feed the hungry, you're doing society a disservice. The idea is to let the weak sort of die off, because if you help them, it's just going to create a weaker population in the future. You want the strongest to survive on their own. Well, gee, that sounds really great if you're at the top of the food chain. But if you happen to be, let's say, African American, a homosexual, a woman, just simply a woman in some cases, if you happen to be from a different country, from a different culture, you could be labeled as feeble-minded. It wouldn't take much during the 1800s, early 1900s. You would be characterized as being at the bottom of the food chain. You could even be forcibly sterilized. There were laws in this country that allowed people who were defined as being quote-unquote intellectually deficient to be sterilized so they couldn't have children. The idea was that if the weak and the unintelligent are not reproducing, it's not going to dumb down our society later on. It sounds pretty scary, but these were ideas that really caught fire in this country and also in Europe. Hitler got a lot of his ideas about creating the perfect human race from what he saw happening from these ideas that were stemming from Europe and even in the United States. And we'll talk more about that as well. I am not saying that Hitler, that America was the reason, Hitler did all of his horrific things to the Jews. That's not what we're saying. But his ideas for creating the human race came from this idea of social Darwinism, which was flourishing not just in Europe, but also in the United States. So we'll talk about that as well. This idea of survival of the fittest, the continued existence of organisms that are best adapted to their environment with the extinction of others. This was a concept in the Darwinian theory of evolution. He was dealing with plants and animals, but again, these ideas were applied to the human race. And we'll talk more about that as we go here. We'll just kind of laying some more groundwork. Now, we'll finish up this part of the unit by talking about several different types of sociology. We've talked about some of the founding fathers, if you will, and their ideas, giving you some ideas and some groundwork that we'll build on. The idea of basic or pure sociology, changing horses a bit here. Sociological research for the purpose of making discoveries about life in human groups, not for making changes in those groups. So the basic or the pure sociologist is not interested in making change or doing anything about social problems. A basic or pure sociologists simply want to analyze society and understand why it is things happen. Pure sociologists don't think it's their role to make changes. Applied sociologists, on the other hand, use sociology to solve these problems, from the micro level of the classroom interaction to the larger macro level of crime and pollution. In other words, applied sociologists, they don't want to just figure out why things are happening. They want to do something about it. They want to engage in reform and try to make society better, or to make the human race better. Sociologists actually founded the NAACP. They work in AIDS research. Sociologists work to solve problems in the workplace. They investigate social problems like pornography, child pornography, rape, pollution, and terrorism. And then you have public sociology. This is part of what I do. This is applying sociology for the public good. So we're taking what we learn, the theories that we uncover, and we're making them public. We're offering them to people to read, to digest, to interpret. Teaching would be an example of that. People who write research articles, nerds and dorks like me who like to teach and do research. So we're applying the use of the sociological perspective to guide politicians, policymakers, to help educate, which could lead to reform or change. And we'll call that the end of that part. Thank you.